Letter 12. The Dera. May 11th, 1933. Dear travellers on the Holy Path, in some respects, the month of March has been the most notable of all since this disciple arrived in India. The Master's work constantly expands and increases in momentum. At every monthly satsang, thousands meet the Master here, and hundreds are initiated. During March, almost 2,500 were initiated. And now the Father's spiritual family is increasing more rapidly than ever before. The Master goes to Bombay. The first week in March, the Master left the Dera for an extended tour to Bombay and many other places. He was only 3 days in Bombay and initiated 40 applicants, they say nearly all of a very high class. The number included Lady Joshi, whose husband was Home Member or Prime Minister to the government of the central provinces at Nagpur. Sir Joshi and his daughter Mrs. Bedi were already initiates. Mrs. Day, wife of the Commissioner of Amrauti Division of the central provinces, was also initiated by the Master at Amrauti on the 7th. The Master at Indore. After stops at numerous small places, the Master went to Indore, the capital of the state of Holkar. This place will be remembered by some of you as the place where lived the Raja who married Miss Miller of Seattle. They say he has a palace here which cost over $1.5 million. But they seldom live in it now, as the Raja lost his job as king and now has nothing to do but try to enjoy life. He has a real castle in France, which they say requires 200 servants to keep in order. They live there part of the time, so he and the former Miss Miller go where fancy takes them. At Indore, the Deputy Inspector General of Police is the son-in-law of Rai Sahib, private secretary to the Master, and so everything was done to make the Master's coming a royal occasion. More than 4,000 people were at the station to meet him. The enthusiasm was great. Immense crowds attended his satsangs, and on the 19th and 20th, 1,850 souls were initiated by the Master. This extra large number were brought to the Master chiefly through the influence of Pritham Das, the man mentioned in number 10 of these letters. He used to be regarded as a guru and is still much loved and venerated by the people, although he now directs everyone to his Lord and Master, our beloved Sadguru. Here the interest was profound, and everywhere the Great Father was greeted by throngs of people eager to see and hear him. On the return trip, the Master visited Agra, where he was most cordially received by Sahibji, the head of the Agra Satsang, with whom he remained overnight. The Master was especially delighted to have another visit with Seth Sahib, a real saint and nephew of the great Swamiji. His health is now somewhat improved. Satsangs not united. This may be a good place to say, in answer to many questions, that there is no organic connection whatsoever between our Master and his satsang here and the Agra Centre. There never has been any connection except that of a similarity of teaching and a common origin. That satsang came down to the present leader Ananda Sarup, commonly called Sahibji, through the gurus mentioned in the discourses, Rai Bahadur Saligram, B. Brahm Shankar Mishra, and Sakar Sahib. Besides this one in Agra, there are 5 or 6 other centres of considerable importance. I believe they claim 10 altogether, each with its own guru, and standing out independent of all the rest. Of these smaller groups, the main one is in Allahabad. There are in all India now close to 250,000 Radha Soami adherents. It should be kept in mind that in this science There is no such thing as a church organisation, neither is it a lodge or an order. The master is the beginning and the end of the organisation, although the general gathering of any particular group of his disciples is called a satsang. The Beas group or centre. Our own group had its inception through the work of Saint Baba Jemal Singh, who was a disciple of the founder, Swamiji, but was never connected with the Agra group. And so this centre never had any connection with the Agra gurus. Baba Jemal Singh became the guru of our master, Maharaj Sawan Singh, whom he initiated up in the foothills of the Himalayas in 1894. Baba Jemal Singh then laid the foundation of this great work in the Punjab, with this little dera as his centre. And here he passed to the higher regions in 1903, leaving his work to our master, whom he designated as his successor. Our master is therefore the spiritual grandson of Swamiji through Baba Jemal Singh, and has never had any sort of connection with the other centres or any of their gurus, except that of brotherly love and good fellowship. Our master and this satsang have always adhered strictly to the teachings and methods of the great founder, Swamiji. His teachings have been handed down to our master intact by Baba Jemal Singh, and so our Sadguru continues to teach his disciples in strict accord with the teachings of Swamiji. These teachings are also in full accord with the teachings of all other saints from time immemorial, and from Kabir Sahib and Guru Nanak down to Maharaji himself. Entente cordiale between groups. At the present time, there exists the utmost entente cordiale between the two great centres of Radha Soami disciples, and between all the other centres, so far as this writer knows. And this fact was strongly emphasised by our master's recent visit to Agra. He was with them also during the big Christmas celebration held by the Agra Centre. At Agra, they carry on an extensive industrial and manufacturing activity along with their spiritual work. They do this, they say, to supply employment to thousands of satsangis and to develop efficiency in self-support. But our master devotes his energies solely to spiritual work with a minimum of attention to material things. It may be proper to say here that the magnificent monument to Swamiji, now being built in Agra, is being erected by funds donated by rich relatives of Swamiji, together with some private subscriptions from other satsangis. But in this, our master and this satsang have taken no part. The master at home again. On March 23rd, the master returned to the dera from his long tour. Great crowds gave him an enthusiastic welcome back home. The dera without him is only a place with sacred memories. His loving greetings bring light and gladness to thousands who await his return. Already many have gathered for the monthly satsang. The next day the place is swarming with visitors. Tents are set up and all buildings of the dera are literally beehives of activity. Porches and verandas are full of cots and mats on which the people sleep. Thousands are coming and going. The public kitchen is cooking vast kettles of rice and vegetables and great stacks of chapatis. The latter is a sort of pancake made of whole wheat flour and is a staple bread in this country. 12,000 people are to be fed at this gathering. No one is charged for meals, but each one who is able to contribute to the fund goes to the secretary and gives what he can afford to give, much or little. Thus funds are provided in plenty to meet all expenses. The Raja and Rani of Landora. This satsang will be remembered especially on account of the presence of the Raja and Rani, King and Queen, of Landora. He is the ruler of a small state or kingdom in the north of India. The Rani has been a satsangi for nearly 3 years. Finally, the Raja himself decided to come. This disciple went to the afternoon satsang as usual, and took his seat on the matting and rugs in the open compound, before the little platform on which the master sits. Everybody sits on rugs or matting here. No chairs. The people would not be comfortable on chairs. This disciple has learned to sit cross-legged with the rest of them. This way, many more people can occupy the same floor space. It is not so uncomfortable as you would think after you get used to it. A little open space had been kept for the Raja, and presently he came and sat down as unostentatiously as any of the rest. The only thing that indicated any difference was the fact that an attendant placed a silk-embroidered cushion for the Raja to sit on, and a little extra space was reserved around him so that His Highness might not be crowded. This writer sat by his side and pondered how the high and the low alike all come to sit at the great Master's feet. Here all are one. Earthly distinctions are forgotten. To the American, it was hard to realize that a real king sat there by his side with the rest, listening to the Master's gracious message as eagerly as anyone. The Rani sat in a little enclosure just back of the Master and to one side, a group of ladies attending her, but with no pomp or ceremony at all. A glance across the grounds showed an armed military guard pacing back and forth in front of the guest house, the only sign that royalty was quartered there. During his discourse, the Master said very definitely that all earthly distinctions counted for naught in the realm of the soul. The rich man and the prince, the ruler and the pauper were all on the same footing when they faced the great future. All were one before the Supreme Father, and before him nothing counted but submission to the supreme will and the practice of the sound current under the direction of a living Master. At the end of the satsang, the Raja bowed in obeisance at the Master's feet and would have caught hold of them, but the Master stepped back and would not permit it. That is a privilege he accords to a very select few, but kings and the rich are not among that few, unless they are at the same time very devoted disciples who have proved their love for him and the purity of their hearts. For 3 days the Raja attended satsang and listened attentively to the Master's words. He was given several private hearings also, with a chance to ask questions. After that, he asked for initiation, and on Monday he was given Naam, making him a real disciple. His greatest difficulty, he said, was to give up wine. However, he gave the Master his promise that he would discontinue its use. On Tuesday, the distinguished company left the Dera. They expect to return here for the May satsang. The Raja has invited the Master and the rest of us to his palace next fall, when, he says, he will have every man, woman and child in his territory out to see and hear the Master. A Kashmiri Pundit initiated. About 14,000 people attended this satsang, and at its conclusion 490 were initiated. Included in this number was a pundit, a learned man from Kashmir. These highly educated men are usually so set in their own ideas and vain of their learning that they cannot be approached with anything new or different. And no doubt that is what blocks the holy way to many of the world's greatest scholars. The very thing upon which they pride themselves most is their worst enemy, for by it they are blinded to all other avenues of knowledge. But no obstacle seems to stand in the way of approach to our Master. He draws all men from every walk of life, as the magnet draws the iron filings. Besides, the truth of the Santmat message appeals alike to both heart and intellect. Secret of the Master's powers. Some of the older and more advanced satsangis here tell this disciple that the secret of the Master's power to draw all men to him can be known only after one has gone inside and has followed him to the higher regions. Then it becomes clear to him. Looking at him as a mere man, one can form no conception of his true greatness. But if you go inside and travel with him to and through those upper regions, then, and then only, do you see him as he is. There, they say, it is no uncommon sight to witness hundreds of thousands of souls, all radiant in their own light, but all following him and bowing at his holy feet in loving adoration. They say that the throngs attending him there run even into millions in one vast multitude, and the higher up you go with him, all the way up to Sachkhand, the greater he is seen to be. He is literally and truly King of Kings all the way through those regions of light. But returning to earth again, he never says a word of all of that himself, and appears among us simply as a kindly, patient father going about ministering to his children. Gracious God, only to be able to go with him every day to those fair lands and behold his glory there. Is there anything on earth to be compared with that? And yet there are those right here among us who can do it. Why not you and I? Isn't it something worth working for? What has the poor old world to offer anyone in comparison with this? Love, the gift of the Master. At satsang one day, the Master made the statement that going inside and advancing to higher regions depended more on love than upon anything else. A satsangi asked, "Can that love be developed in every disciple?" The Master's reply was very significant and should be remembered. He said, "No, that love is the gift of the Master." Then the satsangi asked, "Will the disciple always get it?" The Master said, "Why not, if he works for it? Everyone else pays wages earned, and so, if anyone works for the Master, he must draw the wages due him." It is also highly important to bear in mind that working for the Master means primarily to purify your mind and to sit for Simran, Dhyan and Bhajan. That is really the Master's work. You are doing him the greatest service when you prepare yourself for going inside. The Master is so immeasurably above us that in the very nature of the case, it is usually impossible to render him any service of a material sort. Only a privileged few can ever do that. But the one great service that all can render is the great work of carrying forward one's own development. In case you may not all be familiar with these three important technical terms, a few words of explanation may be given here. Simran is the repetition of the 5 holy names as directed when you are initiated. Dhyan means contemplation of the Master's form, and that is done simultaneously with Simran at the eye centre. Those who have not seen the Master may feel that they are doing the Simran in his presence. Incidentally, it may be pointed out that holding a photograph of the Master in mind is not good. Then comes Bhajan, which means listening for or to the sound current. These three should have attention at every sitting. If at first you cannot hear the sound current, you should listen for it for a short time anyway. The Master on tour again. On April 2nd, the Master once more left the Dera on an extended tour to many villages and towns, but he told this disciple that he was getting tired of these long tours and intended to cut them out and stay here, letting the people come to him if they wished to see him. But whether he will do this or not remains to be seen. He is so kind and generous-hearted that it is difficult for him to refuse their appeals when they beg him to come to their towns. Of course, he will be leaving about the 1st or middle of June for the hill stations to escape the excessive heat of this section. Inexhaustible Fountain of Mercy. When the Great Father had gone, and night had fallen upon the Dera, this disciple made the following entry in his diary. The Master has gone, His gracious Radha Soami has been said, and we are once more left alone with our meditations and our holy memories. Often this disciple has wondered if the incomprehensible mercy and loving kindness of the Master would not some day slacken, as in the case of all other men he has ever known. We are so accustomed to witnessing in the average man an exaggerated devotion for a time, only to see it give way later to more or less indifference. After that, each one goes his own way in pursuit of his own selfish ends. But now, for almost a year, we have watched the daily outpouring of the Master's love to all of his nearly 60,000 children as they come and go in a constant stream. Daily, this unworthy disciple has shared in that love, and, incomprehensible as it may appear to the average American, the volume of this divine compassion grows greater all of the time instead of less. The holy light of it burns brighter every day as the multitudes that come to see the Master constantly increase in number. Daily the divine mystery of the Master himself grows upon us. But the intellect utterly fails to grasp the full meaning of it. When we try to reduce it to ordinary language and express it in terms of daily life, we fail completely. The River and the Holy Secret. And so this afternoon, when the Master had gone, this disciple turned and walked toward the jungle and the river bank, where he sat down to think. His head was literally dizzy with the magnitude of the problem. We know that the Master is able to do any sort of a miracle that he may choose to perform, but he is himself the supreme miracle. We know it is so, and yet we ask, how can it be? We know he is a Superman toward whom all philosophy points as the goal of evolution. We know he is the embodiment of the noblest human aspirations. But when you stand face to face with the living Master himself, when you grasp his hand, when his gracious smile and loving words make your own soul glad with an inexpressible delight, all philosophy vanishes from your mind, and just the joy of his living presence remains. We sought the river bank, where in solitude we could think, where we might quiet the surging tumults of thoughts that come unrestrained. So we sat down and asked that calm and emotionless river to tell us of the mystery, this river that comes down so quietly from the snow-covered Himalayas. Glancing northwards, we can see those majestic old hills, those age-old sentinels towering in their superb grandeur over the region of Punjab, their pure sunlit summits pointing always to the highest heavens. From their feet flows this slow-rolling river, this ancient river that for 10,000 generations has kept its silent way, to empty at last into the Indus and the Arabian Sea. We begged this ancient river to unlock the holy secret and explain to us the perpetual miracle of the Master himself. And the river replied, ever so gently and without the use of clumsy words, as the river flows on forever, regardless of the ways of men, so flows the love of God. Be as constant in your devotion to the Master as the river is in its course, and his love will carry you to that supreme ocean as surely as the river flows to the open sea. But a little disappointed, we said, Venerable stream, I knew all of that already. You talk like a preacher. I asked you to tell me more of the divine mystery of the Master himself. And then the river replied, O little soul, why does the drop try to swallow the ocean? Only when you have become a master yourself can you comprehend a master. And then, while the night fell over the valley of the Beas, as silently as a feather drops from the sky, this lonely disciple took his refuge and returned to the solitude of his own room, but pondering still over the sublime mystery. Affectionately yours, Julian P. Johnson.